and this is Cindy at Source Energy Epiphanies. And this is my first video podcast that is correlated with the upcoming talk radio show, Twilight Epiphanies Talk Radio, that's going to be on Feminine Frequency Radio Network this upcoming Thursday, the premiere show. Have you got your PIP on? 7 to 8:30 p.m. Central Standard Time on Feminine Frequency Radio Network. So today I'd like to introduce the C technique. What does that mean? C stands for Source Energy Epiphanies, and the rest of it is the C technique, EFT+. So the C technique is simply a combination of, when I'm working with a client, the best of my skills are Reiki energy work, and in fact any kind of energy work, dream analysis, numerology, and emotional freedom technique. So in time, as I acquired an additional skill in an area and continued to work with clients, someone would come in for an emotional freedom technique, and in sitting across from them and working with them, I realized that I was immediately in a Reiki energy state where I was tuned into their energy field and able to feel what they were experiencing in the way of a drop of fear, if they made a statement and they perhaps wasn't acknowledging it on their face that they were fearful when they made this statement, I would feel it in their energy field. Or they would make a statement and their throat chakra was tight, or I was feeling a sensation in their heart chakra. So basically what was happening was I realized throughout sessions that, one, I can't cut Reiki out. It's simply going to always be happening. I'm always going to be in an energetic state once someone invites me into their energy field of receiving through my receptions, my proprioceptive awarenesses of these subtle energies, what was happening with them. And the beautiful part of that is what it afforded me to be able to do. I was able to start connecting people to their energy sensations and retuning them back into feelings that they were having. So when we would do a tapping session and or simply even in the talk session part where I'm beginning to field questions from them from what they're here for and what their conflict is, etc., going into their childhood and so on, when they were offered a different perspective on the situation that they're working through, and suddenly, even from simply offering them a different angle of perception, I would feel a whoosh, happening within them. And when I can say to them right away, okay, I just felt when we made that statement, can you confirm for me that this is true, that I felt a rush in your lower chakra level here, in your lower areas, and they would confirm, yes, I felt that. So now something that would have eluded them, that they wouldn't have noticed, that by themselves changing a perception angle, a point of view on something that is giving them a challenging time, whether it's current or from the past, then they had a frequency experience of being cleared from something in their energy field. Now they're tuned in more, because that is how the connection is being forged once again. So that is part of emotional freedom technique here. And have you got your PIP on? The name of the first show means pure energy perception, referring to pure inner energy perception. So we are working on purifying, on refining, on increasing, on retuning in this awareness level of what's happening inside us, okay? So that's how Reiki, in a sense, energy work is a part of the C technique. So even when I'm doing emotional freedom technique, this is an energy working with the tapping on the energy system, but at the same time we are also going into an inner state where you are doing an energy session on yourself by increasing your conscious awareness of what is inside as a feedback loop to you, because the feedback loop to you is data, significant data. People come in and they have a lot on their plate, and for me, that's okay, great. The more you bring in here, the more data we have. This is data. Everything is data. It's not bad. It's data, and that's how we look at it. So the next aspect that I began to work with in the emotional freedom technique sessions was that as I was fielding questions with someone and getting to know any situation that someone is in has a childhood correlation and generally has a reference to what we might call a past life situation. And my current feelings about stating something about past life is that it's all happening at the same time. So it's not really in the past, it's just something that's in a time loop that is repeating itself, and you are energetically still connected to it somehow. So in this respect, I started to ask someone, can I have your birth date? Do you mind if I look up what your numerology information is? And what that would do for me is, if I was starting to formulate an idea about an energy frequency story, okay, because our story that we're involved in here, circumstances, are energy frequency codes. They're energies that we're working with. They're frequencies that we're working with. And frequencies have characteristics. So these frequency energy stories are also within someone's numerology chart. The numbers on paper represent frequencies. The combination of frequencies in a person are what describe the energy story that someone has embedded themselves in, become entangled in, has reason to be in, has passion or desire or confusion to be in. So after asking for the numerology then and looking for that, I began to work each time with numerology to enhance and bring more clarity to anything also intuitively that I was receiving, to determine whether or not I was receiving on a clear level. So numerology again became a component of the C technique, and something I want to talk about as to how I work with numerology. Generally, when people look at something like astrology or numerology, they're tending to identify with it as, okay, I have these characteristics because I'm a Leo. I have these characteristics because I have so many of the number 8s and 1s, which are similar to a Leo personality characteristic. And the truth of the matter is, you're not that way because of the frequencies. The frequencies are there because in another space and time, you've chosen to identify with these energy frequency codes. You have a reason, an energy storyline that is interlaced with these frequencies, that is within these frequencies. You are creating a story with these frequencies. You are writing a story with these frequencies. The difficult thing that has happened is that we are not always consciously aware of how we got here, that we are the author and director of our story, that we have free will to be the author and director. The misunderstanding is that once we are in potential spaces where past events and trauma wounding has not been properly dismantled, healed, regarded in a more optimal perspective than meaning you are working at removing the misunderstandings, the misconceptions, the limiting beliefs, the untruths that are all part of old memories. Once you remove that, you have an opportunity to move ahead. So we are looking at, when I look at someone's energy story on paper, I am looking at the energy story on paper and observing it for what is someone's reason for having this energy story. Is this energy story serving you well? And by that I mean, there are many times when I'm reading an energy story on paper where I can see that someone has set circumstances up, in a sense, against themselves. And a lot of times that is, when we trace it back to a beginning space, a root issue, it is connected to a trauma wounding where there is still residual guilt, blame, and shame. And because a lot of times when I'm working with people, as I was saying earlier, the event that they are working with right now has an energy story from childhood. And in a person's conscious mind, they're saying, well, I already, as an adult, have looked at that. I've forgiven the person. I feel completely fine about it. But if you are still experiencing the energy story of that event that took place in other circumstantial areas of your life, just written a little bit differently, but the underlying energy story is the same, then you still have a part of you that is unresolved, that is unfinished, that is somehow a disruptive energy code there. It's like a cassette tape that has that storyline, and there usually is a child aspect that still feels and believes in the misconceptions that the child had at that time. So when I look at that, a lot of the work that happens in EFT then is to go back into reaching that inner child space, talking with the inner child, doing also a soul retrieval here in this space, by you, the adult, merging with the child again in the adult understanding that you can bring to the child that the child did not experience at the time of the trauma. And that is what closes out these energy stories where our reasoning has been infected. So in a sense, because we are being inundated and have been in more of a programming here that says it's binary, it's black or white, it's left or right, it's good or bad, it's duality, there are other options. So we are seeking to go to an inner space within ourselves where a new aha moment, an epiphany of a new perspective pops into our head. While you're in this session, you suddenly have this space where you realize it was not my fault. It really wasn't my fault, etc. So this aha moment is completing that energy cycle to come to a place of closure. So that's why the number 9 comes up and swings around and closes back on itself. It's a time of closure. So you've moved the space up into the 9 is up in here. You've moved it from a lower place up into a higher place, and you've completed a cycle. You've finished some business that you didn't realize you were not finished with. And we utilized the reflections in the numerology chart. We utilized the reflections of the energy story that you brought to me. Okay, so then next we have dream analysis. So dream analysis gives us a very intricate look at what is in the subconscious that is being projected outward. So what was starting to take place with me, well, first of all, for myself, when I first had my second big Kundalini awakening over 20 years ago, dream analysis was profound, powerful, and I went right into it, all the way with, I would wake up at night and record 6 different dreams in a row that I had. I would wake up, go over the dream, go back to sleep. I would go rehearse it so that I remembered. I'd wake up in the morning and record all of the dreams in the REM states. So at that point, when I learned it, I was learning a little bit under the influences of more people like Patricia Garfield, who did the book Creative Dreaming. And every dreamer is moved towards enhancing your lucid awareness in a dream, and in stages working up to that, you can work creatively with the dream plane in very profound states. And I term this under dream analysis, but what I also mean by that is you becoming a lucid dreamer who is able to incubate dreams to where you are more consciously aware of the dream, even enough to retrieve the information and keep it with you and bring it back. So at the time then, in working with clients, I began to realize that they would walk in and say, I had this dream last night. It was kind of unusual and it's really strong in my memory. That dream was more information being brought to us that helped that person to identify with the inner energies inside them that were what was giving them a conflict issue somewhere that they needed to resolve, in their lives. Additionally, if someone wasn't as connected or having a very big need of information coming, I would receive a dream in the morning, wake up, and I'd already been used to this happening for me because it's the type of dreamer that I am. I was dreaming in someone else's dream, and it was giving me references, even though it was in my symbols, so that I could understand it and convey it to them. It was about something that they were working on. And in many cases, it was very significant. I have woken up in the morning and had a dream and thought, okay, this doesn't seem like it pertains to me. I don't have that kind of an issue going on or that kind of an issue going on, in a sense. So I knew it had something to do with someone else. And sure enough, I would receive a text, and there within the text, I text back the person and said, hey, by the way, since you had just texted, you obviously were thinking of me helping you because I already received a dream about that. And I was able to give them the information. So the dream plane has multiple different ways of working with it that are so incredibly wonderful. I have worked very serious in the dream plane. I had a woman who was murdered come to me in the dream plane through a connection of another person who asked me about looking into the murder. And she started to come to me. First of all, I was aware that she was around from the sensations, and then I began to dream about the murder itself taking place. So I was able to give the state police some very significant information, which in hindsight and looking up everything afterwards was 90% accurate. Have to stop here. Okay, hello. I had to take that phone call. And in the meantime, I did check the volume, and I did have the volume a little bit low for recording, so I have improved that. And I'm going to continue on then about dream analysis. So the point of bringing up working with a case as such that I did was that I was able to incubate dreams and bring back information through asking to go to a certain place while I was dreaming to retrieve certain information. So in a sense, this was lucid dreaming. I was creating where I would go. I was what we call incubating a dream. And I was able to come back with a very significant psychological profile of the person who committed the crime, and a lot of other very important details that, whether they were helpful or not, is not something that I followed up on. But again, in looking at it after the event, and after he was indicted for the crime and sentenced for it, all of this information had come up. So we are able to work with the dream plane in a big variety of different methods, and from communicating with animals to communicating with children who aren't able to convey a message to us. They may be keeping it to themselves. It's extremely helpful in family situations. I appreciate how Patricia Garfield took what the Sonoy Indians were doing as a tribe, and they would have dream analysis discussions every morning before they began their day, as they discussed their day over their first meal, because they would deal with a problem in the dream plane before it had to manifest into someone's personal life and into the community. And that's how I started working with that space. It's exceptionally beautiful, and that's a lot of what we're also going to be talking about. And the space, then, what you can do is what we call integrate the dream information. So if there is a dream sequence that you dream and it's not a happy outcome, well, we work with that in emotional freedom technique. We work those symbols into the language that we're using, because it's giving you an exact energy representation. That's your frame of reference in your inner projector. Your mental frame of reference is there to work with that symbol, and we integrate it in what's called recapitulation towards a more positive outcome, and there are different ways to do that. And then last here, I want to summarize up with the show upcoming is going to be primarily a discussion about emotional freedom technique, and I am going to be leading guided healing sessions of emotional freedom technique during the show. So we will prep for that. I'll bring us in a little bit deeper and then prep for that and have us prepared to go into a deeper state. So if you here are able to learn what I'm going to show you is the tapping protocol, then when you're working with it, when I'm working with you, you don't have to be in a left brain linear space of trying to remember what the next tapping point is, because that kind of takes away from you to be in a receptive state where you're really inside yourself recording anything that you're feeling, noting it. So also, you do not have to memorize it. I'm going to guide people to just using a very simple 1 or 2 points to tap on if that's what they would like to do. So it's really not necessary that you have it absolutely memorized, but here it is for you to look at and understand. So I begin with hands over the heart, and we do a setup phrase here, which we will talk about during the show, and we state that 3 times. And then the tapping that you do is generally done with your dominant hand, and you can do that with a clump of fingers. You could do it with a flat hand in some of the points if you wanted to, with your pointer finger, your middle finger, or your pointer and middle finger together. And generally you tap 5 to 7 times, light to moderate tapping. You are stimulating the parasympathetic nervous system. So what I'll continue to talk about more in the show is how you are reassociating a traumatic point that you were in fight or flight, and now you're going to be going back and reconnecting these memories with a calming effect of the parasympathetic nervous system, bringing us back into homeostasis. So you are rewiring, you are reconfiguring, you're working with your neural connections and the memory associations that have all been stored in the limbic system, in the amygdala, the hippocampus, and so on. So this is a physiology that's also taking place here. So the first point is on the crown of the head. The next point is on the third eye. And then where the eyebrow begins, it doesn't matter which side, or if you are tapping on both sides, it doesn't matter as we go on here. That is your choice. There is no right or wrong. Side of the eye on the bone, under the eye, directly under the pupil on the bone, in the middle between the nose and the upper lip. The chin point is in the middle of the chin. The collarbone point going from the sternal notch above the sternum here is a U-shaped notch. Go 1 inch down and 1 inch over, again, either side or both sides, it doesn't matter. And then if you are right-handed, you will be tapping on your left hand. You are going to tap on the nail corner, the lower nail corner bed of each finger on the right side. If you are tapping left-handed to right, you are doing that on the left lower nail corner bed of each finger. And then we end with the karate chop point here. And that is one whole sequence all the way through, back to hands over the heart here. So also to note, there is no right or wrong protocol for tapping. A lot of times clients come, people to work with me, and they have seen so many different tapping protocols and they worry that they're doing the wrong one. It's not possible to do the wrong one. You are stimulating the meridian endpoints. We'll talk about how Gary Craig decided to not have to do applied kinesiology to determine which meridian this trauma wounding is recorded and stored in, this disruption in the energy system. He just tapped on all the meridian points. And as time went on and people became specialists in different areas, they changed the protocol slightly for themselves. So don't worry about that. If you like this one, continue with this one. If you saw a different one, you've been doing a different one, do a different one. It doesn't make any difference. So I'm going to end here and invite you again to join me on this coming Thursday evening, 7 to 8:30 p.m. Central Standard Time on Feminine Frequency Radio Network. Also, if you get the opportunity, I'd like to invite you to visit Stephanie and Oksana's page on Facebook, which is the Feminine Frequency Radio Network, and take a look around, like and share. There are a wonderful group of ladies that they have brought together who are doing incredible radio shows. I'm very happy to have been invited and joining this group of dynamics here. So thank you for sharing, liking, and if you have any questions here or would like to participate with me in the work I do, my website is theseetechnique.com, and or I can be reached through that, or theseetechnique@gmail.com. So goodbye, thank you, health, happiness, and abundance to you. Bye-bye.